The most loving thing God ever did for us was humble himself and become a human. Today we're going to be talking about humility and how that's the key to true greatness and freedom in your life. I'll see you in a minute. Welcome to another episode of Charis Daily. My name is Daniel Bennett. It's great to see you all. And as you can see, we're in the Christmas season, so Merry Christmas in advance, I guess. And we're very happy to have you here. This is not necessarily a Christmas message, but really they're all Christmas messages because it's all about Jesus, right? And so it's great to have you guys here. Hope you enjoy this. What I want to be sharing with you guys about today is God's love, but more specifically, I want to talk about humility. What is humility? How do we walk in more humility? What are the benefits? Why is it so loving that God humbled himself for us? And why does God want us to be humble? You know, what's the end result of it? And so I want to talk about humility, and I think it's going to bless you. It's one of my favorite topics. You know, I'll even start off by saying that years ago, this became a passion of mine, is this topic. God put on my heart to just study humility because I realized that some of the greatest heroes were humble, and I saw a connection. Right, so Exodus 33, verse 11, if you've ever seen this scripture, says, "The Lord spoke to Moses face to face as a man speaks to a friend." But then in Numbers 12, verse 3, it says, Now the man Moses was very humble, more than all the men who were on the face of the earth. And so I kind of pieced that together and realized if the most humble man on the earth at the time had the most amazing relationship with God, maybe there's a connection between humility and having access to God. And so I realized, well, I want to be the New Testament version of Moses. If he had that in the Old Covenant, I want that in the New Covenant. Because, I want to know God as much as possible. I mean, that's my driving desire in life. And so I realized humility is the most important topic, or at least one of the most important topics that you could possibly learn about. And so I've loved the topic of humility. God's done some amazing things in my life through the years of studying this and spending time with God focused on this subject. So again, if you can have that amazing kind of experience like Moses, because he's also so incredibly humble, what's stopping you, right? It's fair game. If it was about who had the most talent or who had the best looks or who had the best gifts or whatever else, then many of us wouldn't have a chance. I probably would. Just kidding. Many of us wouldn't have a chance. But if it's about who's the most humble, we all have equal opportunity, right? It's like when you watch the Olympics, when you watch people, do certain sports, you're like, well, I just don't even have the genetics to ever even compete in that, right? And like you're too tall, you're too short, you're too thin, you're too whatever, you're too old, you're too anything. You might say, I can't even compete. But when it comes to humility, every single human can be humble. It's an equal opportunity. And so no one's limiting you. We are as close to God as we want to be. He's given us the access to him. It's just a matter of, well, how much will we receive that? How much will we walk in that? So, I want to talk about humility, how to walk in humility, what true greatness really is in the kingdom, and why we should want this. It's not a wrong thing to want to be humble. Some people think if you say you want to be humble, you ruined it, because it means that you're trying to be proud. Don't get discouraged by dumb things like that. That's not how this actually works. So one thing to keep in mind, a couple things here. Romans 2, verse 11 says that there's no partiality with God. So, I just want to lay the groundwork first of all, right? No partiality with God is that you have the ability to walk in more humility. You have the opportunity to have this amazing world-changing relationship with God. It's not just for people that God said, I'm going to choose them because they're my favorite and not them. It's based off of our desire for these things, right? There's a reason why God chose Mary. There's a reason why God chose David. There's a reason why God chooses people. And it's not just because he randomly picks them. He picks them because he sees something in their heart. It's this desire for more, this desire to know him, to be humble. So there's no partiality with God. He can use you as much as he can use anybody else. It's a matter of how much do we want it? How much will we receive? How much will we humble ourselves and receive what he's trying to give us? Right? Another example here, James 5, verse 11. It says that Elijah was a man with a nature like our own, like ours. So again, many times we put these here, I won't read the rest of the verse, but we put these heroes of the faith on a pedestal sometimes and say, well, that person's amazing and that person's amazing. I can never be like them. But here we see Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. And he prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3 years and 6 months. So Elijah was just a human, but he trusted God. And so the point is, look, if this works for him, it can work for you. So same thing, when we see promises about intimacy with God and relationship with him and hearing his voice clearly, things like that, be inspired. Don't just see heroes and say, that's amazing for them. I want to be inspired at a lower level. No, say, no, if they can do it, God can do that with me too. Don't disqualify yourself. It's one of the keys to humility is don't disqualify yourself. You too can be humble. You can have an amazing walk with God. It's not about who has the most talents. It's about who says, God, I'm nothing without you. I want what you have for me. So another example of this, again, just showing that no one's disqualified, is Luke chapter 21, starting in verse 2. Jesus was watching people give offerings, and it says, he saw also a poor widow putting in 2 mites. So he said, truly I say to you that this widow has put in more than all. So again, she had the smallest gift there in the natural, but the fact that she gave everything she had, right? God looks at the percentage and what it means to us in the heart, not just at the amount. So he's saying she gave 100%. She gave her life. She put it all on the line. She's just giving her whole self to me. That's amazing. She gave more than everybody else because other people were rich and they were giving these big monetary things, but it wasn't their whole heart. But with her, it was her whole heart. So we all have the exact same potential. Like I said, if someone said only billionaires can give enough to get close to God, and only millionaires can give enough to get really close to God, and then the people who aren't that will only get sort of close to God, then we're disqualified. Many people are disqualified if it's based on our resources and things like that, but it's not. It's completely based on our heart. So it's open to everybody. Nothing's stopping you from having the closest walk with God that anyone's ever had. It's purely up to you. Do you want it? Will you walk in humility? Will you receive God's grace? We'll talk more about this here in a little bit. In James 4, verse 8, says, I got a lot of scriptures for this one, so hopefully you know that this is a Bible show. But James 4:8 says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you, right? Anybody has that option. This is true for everybody. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. How much do you want him? Draw near to him and he will draw near to you. He wants you to do this. He's not saying like, leave me alone. I only want to spend time with important people. He's saying, however much you want me, that's how much you get me. Right? One example of this is, with children. I have 3 kids right now. My wife is pregnant with a 4th on the way. And very excited. And the thing with my kids is that I love them with all my heart. I love them all equally. But on certain days, one of them may want to spend more time with me than others. I still love all of them the same, but if one of them wants to spend more time with me and enjoys my company, then guess who gets to spend more time with me? It's the one who wants to. If they all want to, they all get to spend time with me. But if one is happy doing their own thing and the other wants to spend time with me, I still love them the same, but the one who enjoys my company gets more time with me. It's not a punishment. It's just you want that, you don't want that. Totally fine. I love you. So again, same with God. If you want him, you get to spend more time with him. Draw near to him and he'll draw near to you. God's not going around saying only these super duper famous special Christians get this cool access to me. It's really up to our desire. We're only limited by our own desire and our humble spiritual ambition, not like a carnal type of ambition. So, let's see, should I skip this part? Yeah, I'm going to skip this one. Well, I already mentioned it, so I'll mention real quick. But John the Baptist, he's another example that Jesus himself in Matthew 11, I won't read it. But Matthew 11, he said that there's been no one greater in history than John the Baptist. So that includes King David, includes Elijah, includes Moses, includes Job, Noah, saying there's no one greater than John the Baptist up until now. But he says, even the least in my kingdom is greater than him. So John the Baptist is the one, though. So he's the greatest. And John the Baptist is the one who says in John 3:30, he must increase, I must decrease. Right? So even John the Baptist had this very humble mindset of, no, it's about him, not about me. By humbling myself, I get to be lifted up and have this amazing relationship with God. It's because he was humble that he was able to be the greatest person under the old covenant. So my first main point was that everybody's qualified, everybody has equal opportunity to be humble and to have this amazing walk with God. It's awesome. And really, this is what Jesus did for us. Like I said at the beginning, he humbled himself to become a human, and that's how we have access to have relationship with him. And so when we follow his example, we get to have this amazing relationship with him in return, right? And so that's the first main point. The second one, though, is that it's not wrong to want to be great in the kingdom. It's not wrong to want to be humble. True greatness and true humility are the same thing. And so we should want these things. God isn't saying don't want to be great, because what he's really trying to say is, I'm going to show you what true greatness is in the kingdom, and then I want you to be great, but my way, not the world's way. So I want to read here. This is about James and John, and in another version, another gospel, when it talks about this, it includes their mother asking Jesus to be the greatest in his kingdom. So Mark chapter 10, starting in verse 37, says, they said to him, grant us that we may sit one at your right hand and the other on your left in your glory. Right? Basically, we want to be the greatest in your kingdom. Verse 38, but Jesus said to them, you do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink and be baptized with the baptism that I'm baptized with? They said to him, we're able. So Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink the cup that I drink, and with the baptism I am baptized with, you will be baptized. But to sit on my right hand and on my left hand is not mine to give, but it's for those for whom it is prepared. And when the 10 heard it, they began to be greatly displeased with James and John. But Jesus called them to himself and said to them, you know that those who are considered rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you. But whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant. And whoever of you desires to be first shall be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. So he's saying, do what I do. I humbled myself, and that's why I'm great. I want you to humble yourself also, and that's how you'll be great in the kingdom. So he's not saying don't want to be great, you should humble yourself instead. He's saying, no, humility is how you become great. It's the secret pathway to get there. So again, if you want amazing intimacy with God, he wants that too. He's not saying, well, don't want that. How dare you? What kind of ego? Who do you think you are to think that you could be God's best friend? He's saying, yeah, the way to do that's humility. So he's saying, yeah, have ambition. It's fantastic, but have it my way, the right way, not in your flesh, not the way the world says it. So I want to back up a little bit and talk about what humility is. And so, we have different definitions for it, and there's some good ones, some not so good ones. So first of all, we all probably know this, but having humility does not mean having a low self-image, right? Jesus did not have a low self-image. He knew he was God, and yet he was humble. So it's not about having no self-image. It's actually about having no self-image, because self-image is, who do I say that I am? What you really want is to have a God image. Who does God say that I am? That's what real humility is. Instead of saying, here's who I think I am, and maybe you have an ego and you're really proud of yourself, and maybe you have shame and you're really ashamed of yourself, doesn't matter. If you're the one telling yourself who you are, that's pride. So humility is saying, I don't get to decide who I am, you get to decide who I am. So true humility is saying, God, I am exactly who you say I am. I'm as valuable as you say I am. I'm as amazing as you say I am. I'm as worthwhile as you say I am. No more, no less. It's agreeing with God. Right? Romans 3, verse 4. It's one of my favorite scriptures. But Paul's saying, certainly not. Indeed, let God be true and every man a liar. All right, and it goes on. But let God be true and every man a liar. So in other words, if you disagree with God, you're wrong. You're a liar. This is even true for you. If you look in the mirror and say you're worthless, you are a liar, because that's not what God says about you. This is the most humble thing you can do, is say, I don't care how I feel. God says that I'm righteous. God says that I'm holy. God says that I'm pure. God says that I'm forgiven. God says that I'm valuable. God says that I'm not damaged goods. God says that I'm full of peace. God says I'm full of joy. God says that I'm healed. The most humble thing you can do is say, yes, sir. Instead of saying, yeah, I know that's what God thinks. It's, you know how like when your mom says you're handsome or you're beautiful or something for the women, right? And you're so handsome, and you're like, yeah, but you're my mom. Of course you say that. I don't know if I actually believe you or not. I mean, my mom was right, but no. So, right, there's a mother's love people talk about, right? Where it's like, you're so handsome, you're so beautiful. And you're like, yeah, but you have to say that. Some people think that's what God is like, where when he says you're righteous, you're pure, you're holy, you're beautiful, you're like, yeah, but you're my father. Of course you say that. No, God has the ultimate opinion. Whatever he says is true. He's never wrong. If he says you're beautiful, you're beautiful. Doesn't matter what other people think. If he says you're holy, you're holy. Doesn't matter what other people think. It's not like with a parent in the natural where they might sugarcoat something, or they see through the lens of their love, really. Where they're like, it's not how other people see this, but they love you so much that they see it anyway. with God, he's actually right. He's not just saying his opinion. He's like, no, you are what I say you are. If I say you're righteous, you're righteous. Again, humility is saying, yes, sir, I believe you. And so the next step of humility is saying, well, if that's true, then I'm going to spend time in the Word to find out what else you say about me. And I'm going to believe every single thing that you say, no matter what it makes me feel. If God says, I want to use you to be a leader, but you're very shy, humility says, okay. It's ego to say, God, you're wrong. You can't. No, I couldn't do that. There's no way. You can use me in other ways, but never like that. Never in the spotlight. Never leading people. Never in something where I might be happy or have wealth or whatever. If it's suffering, if it's miserable, if no one else wants to do it, sure, that's God. But if God says, I want to bless you and I want to honor you, whatever else, no, that can't be God. Now, humility says, Lord, whatever you say, I'll receive it. Anything you say I can do, I can do. If you say that if I can do something and I feel scared, I'll say the fear is a lie, you're the truth, and I'm going to go with you. So this is big. Humility is agreeing with God. But there's more to it. I call that humility 101. Because the basics of humility is saying, I agree with you, Lord. If I disagree with you, I accept that I'm wrong and you're right, and my brain needs to be renewed. It's not that you're wrong. But there's more to it. Because Jesus knew he was God, and he didn't walk around saying, well, I'm God. Of course, you should all worship me. Follow me right now. Do what I say right now. Even though he knew he was God, he had a perfect God image of himself. But there was more to it because he also chose to lower himself. He didn't demand to be treated the way that God saw him, God the Father saw him. He chose to lower himself below where he deserved to be. So that's the next step of humility. Right? Jesus knew exactly who he was, and he chose to lower himself and serve people who didn't deserve it. So that's going beyond just agreeing with God. I agree with God, and I'm lowering myself to serve others. Right? Philippians chapter 2, verse 5, starting in verse 5, says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God. Right? So he knew that he was equals with God because he was God in the flesh. Verse 7, but he made himself of no reputation. Right? He lowered himself, taking on the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Therefore, God has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name. And so Jesus, we see, humbled himself more than anybody else, and God lifted him up more than anybody else. So really, humility boils down to trust. Right? Do we trust that God will take care of us? See, what pride is all about is not trusting God and saying, I need to be my own God because I need to lift myself up. If I need something, I need to take care of it. I'm my own protector. I'm my own reputation creator. I'm my own defender. That's all pride. You're saying, I don't trust God. But if you trust God, you can say, you know what? I trust you. I trust who you say I am. I trust that you'll lift me up. Right? I trust that if I don't self-promote, that you'll still promote me. I trust that I don't have to use my own strength and you'll do it for me. That's what humility is. It's trusting God and saying, I'll let you do what you want to do, and I'll let you do it the way you want to do it, and I'm going to obey you. Right? It doesn't just mean I'm going to sit back and just do nothing. No, because God's leading us to do things. So I trust you that when you lead me to do something, I'll do it. James 4, verse 10 says, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. Again, it's easy to remember the part that says, humble yourselves. But many people who love humility forget the second half of that verse. Humble yourself, and he will lift you up. And that can actually be very uncomfortable if you're not humble enough. Because if you humble yourself, then it means you're focused on lowering yourself. And when God starts lifting you up, you might say like, whoa, 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 my comfort zone is down here. And God's saying, if you're humble enough, you won't care if I lift you up. You can handle it because you won't make it your identity. Right? It's so easy the minute God starts lifting you up to get tempted and to start find your identity in your title and what you do and how people see you, how people think about you. That's why it's so crucial to be humble in the first place is, no, I am who God says I am. So when people think well of me, that's not my identity. When people think badly of me, that's not my identity. My identity is who God says I am and who he made me to be. So, yeah, it's all about trust. It's scary to be lifted up if you don't trust him. It's scary to lower yourself if you don't trust him. If you trust him, it's a piece of cake. You're saying like, look, it's not about me. It's not about my own strength, my own ego, my own works, none of that stuff. It's not my own righteousness, right? I'm not going on trial in my own works. I'm going on trial and being judged based on Jesus's life. And so I'm feeling pretty confident about how he did. So I want to talk real quick about the benefits of humility. There's a lot of benefits to humility, a lot of downsides to pride. So I'm going to go through this list pretty quickly. First of all, humility really simplifies life. Because when you're humble, you're not always worried about your ego. Right? If you're always trying to protect your ego and protect your feelings, and I need to make sure people think the right things about me, and people don't respect me enough, and people don't honor me enough, and people believe lies about me, life is very complicated if you're trying to be your own protector, your own defender, your own advocate, your own PR team. But when you say, no, I'm just going to serve God, humble myself, I don't have to worry about it. Life is very simple when you remove your ego from the equation and say, it's not my problem. I'm not worried about that. The next one is that when you have no ego, your ego won't clash against other people's ego. It's so much easier to get along with people when you're not always worried about your ego. Because when other people have a major ego and you're totally humble, there's no one to clash with. A lot of people are always looking for drama. They're looking for another strong personality to clash against. They want the conflict. They want things to escalate because they like the fight. And if you say, well, I'm just gonna go beneath that. I'm not gonna clash with you. I'm not here to fight against you. You're not my enemy. I'm not gonna compete against you. So if you don't have an ego, your ego can't clash with other people's. It can't get hurt. That's the thing. Humility is the opposite of humiliation. Humility means you have no ego. Humiliation means your ego got hurt and is really angry. So total opposites. One is pride. Humiliation means you have pride. When people say, if you pray for humility, God's going to start to humiliate you. That's the total opposite. Humiliation is when your ego is angry because it's so strong. Humility is when it doesn't bother you. So it's really nice because no one likes to be humiliated. So yeah, that's actually my next point, is that you can't be humiliated because you don't have an ego to get hurt. Humiliation means that you still have pride or shame. They're the same thing. Another benefit of humility is that you'll be free from stress, arrogance, shyness, unforgiveness, bitterness, bad attitudes, not wanting to submit, because those are all forms of self-centeredness. And humility is all about being Christ-centered, not self-centered. So it solves so many problems. So many people go to therapy or counseling or all these different things trying to solve one problem at a time, when in reality, if you just choose humility and focus on God, He'll just set you free from all that stuff, and it won't take effort. Humility also lets you let go of the past, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly, because you're saying my past doesn't define me. Jesus defines me. So whether I made mistakes or I did cool things or whatever else, that's not my identity. I'm not in bondage to my past because of humility. So humility, again, will set you free from all kinds of stuff. When you let Jesus define you, your past will lose its power over you. You won't see that as who you are. You might still remember some things that happened, kind of like I remember a movie that I watched. But when I watch a movie, I don't say that was me. I say that's just something I'm aware of. Same thing with your past. If you don't like your past, you can say, well, the memories are still there, but when I remember it, that's not who I was. I'm a new person. I'm a new creation. God gave me a new heart. So even though it might have been me physically who was there when that happened, it wasn't my heart. I have a new heart now. So humility helps us let go of our past, or it sets us free from our past, really. Humility allows us to be defined by where we're going, not where we came from. Because we're all focused on who am I in the spirit? And we're so focused on eternity and who we are in eternity. It's just amazing. Also, if we're humble, we can love others even if they don't deserve it, right? If our ego's constantly flaring up, then we'll always be ruining our relationships, because nobody's perfect outside of God, right? And so if you don't have humility, then you'll always get angry at other people who mistreat you or make mistakes or let you down or disappoint you or don't live up to expectations, all that kind of stuff. But if you're humble, you can love them anyway, right? Humility and forgiveness are one of the keys to having a long-term relationship, because if you can't forgive somebody, you'll never get to know someone deeply, because the only way to know another human in this world deeply is to be willing to forgive them once you realize they're not perfect. So another benefit of humility is that humility leads to boldness. Humility and boldness are actually the same thing, just two different sides of the same coin. God's version of humility and God's version of boldness are the same thing, right? Because you're not doing things in your own strength. You're saying, it's not my strength in the first place, right? When I fall down, I get back up because it wasn't my own strength in the first place. So you can be very bold because you're not doing it in your own ego and your own righteousness. You're saying, no, it's all God's strength anyway. Another benefit of humility is that casting our cares on Jesus is a sign of humility, right? In 1 Peter 5, where it talks about cast all your cares on Him. Well, I'll go ahead and read it. 1 Peter 5, verse 6. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon Him, for He cares for you. So casting your care on Jesus is actually a sign of humility. Hanging on to your cares and your worries is a sign of pride. You're saying, no, I'm not going to give that to Jesus. I'll be my own God. I'll worry about my problems myself. Being lighthearted and free-spirited is actually a sign of humility because you're saying, this isn't my own strength. I'm just cast this all on Jesus. It's his problem. That's saying, I trust you, Lord. I'm not going to worry about this because I trust you. So it's humility to cast your cares on him. Man, there's so many here. You'll be teachable, right? It's so much easier to learn from others if you're humble because you're not comparing, well, they should learn from me, not the other way around, right? No, I can learn from anybody if I'm humble. Let's see here. Yeah, a humble heart isn't easily offended, and on and on and on. I have a longer version of this that I can't get into all of it right now. To look at the dangers of pride very quickly, you kind of just look at the opposite of everything I was just saying. If you're walking in pride, your ego will always be a factor. You'll always be having to be careful with your ego, your reputation, your pride, your shame, things like that. You won't be able to love people who don't deserve it. You won't be able to walk in your true identity. When you fall, you'll run away from God instead of running to him. That's one of the hugest benefits of humility is you say, if I mess up, I'm going to run to you because I'm not ashamed, right? I'm free. Like, that's not who I am. I made a mistake, but you're my solution. I'm going to run to you instead of run away from you. That's really huge. One thing that people do when they have pride is when they mess up, they try to earn their forgiveness. Like, I know I can't earn my salvation, but I deserve to feel bad for a few weeks, or I deserve to, do this, some kind of penance. That's your flesh trying to earn forgiveness. Humility just receives forgiveness right away. So the real key, actually my final one, the biggest downfall of pride is James 4 verse 6. It says, he gives more grace, therefore he says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. If you walk in pride, God's resisting you. He's resisting your pride because your pride is saying, I'm my own God. If you're humble, he says he gives grace to you. That's the key, is that humility is how we receive God's grace. If you love grace, humility is how you get it. You can know about grace all day long, but if you're not humble, you're not receiving it. Humility is receiving God's grace and saying, I'm not my own God, you are. Anything good has to be a gift from you because I don't deserve any of it. I'm a new creation now, though, so I deserve all of it because you're in me. So how to be humble? Here's the thing, is that you can't do it on your own. That's the whole point. You can't be humble in your own strength. The key to humility is to say, God, I need you. I need you to do this for me. Set me free. Renew my mind. Go to him for help, because if you try and do it in your own strength, that goes against what humility is, because it's all about his strength, not yours. So I hope this is helpful for you. Again, this really does show God's love because he humbled himself to give us his grace. And that's what it's all about. And the reason he wants us to humble ourselves is because there's so much he wants to give us. And he just can't, we won't receive it if we're not in humility, because humility is how we receive from him. So to wrap up real quick, I encourage you to check out or to call our prayer line at 719-635-1111. It's open 24/7. The number's on your screen. I also encourage you to go to charisdailygtn.com. We have a free booklet that we want to give away to you, and we have other resources as well. And don't forget, this show's on 7 days a week. I'm rotating different Charis instructors. Hope it's a blessing to you, and have an amazing Christmas season. Thanks. I'll see y'all next time.